Hey everybody, it's been a good week this week making progress on Healthcare OS. We've been talking about the patient encounter in the last couple videos, and I'm going to continue that theme today. I want to continue to talk about patient encounters in Healthcare OS and how I think that will work. In the last week, actually, I spent some time researching Epic, which is kind of the big, the biggest EHR vendor in the world. They have most of the market, and they also are kind of seen as the gold standard for EHR design and implementation. And they are also, but at the same time as being seen as a gold standard, they're still not that great. There's still a lot of things that can be hard when using Epic. And one of the things that I actually just thought about was like, what if I just actually look to see if people have done walkthroughs on YouTube? It's very hard to find Epic information, and I was like, what if I just tried to find this on YouTube? Found a great YouTube channel, and it was a physician walking through how they do things. And so I actually only was able to get through one video and started basically just screenshotting everything that I could see. It took me a long time to get through it because I kept screenshotting, writing notes, thinking about it, like going back to it, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, the channel has been all the videos have been taken down actually just since yesterday or the day before. So I found it last week and then they're all gone, which is great. But apparently he got a cease and desist or some kind of letter from Epic to stop doing that. Thankfully, I was able to get some of these screenshots before that happened. But what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about how some of like what I've observed with Epic, because it's one thing to hear about a physician using Epic. And I would say that between the physicians I've interviewed, most of them have used Epic, and I would say like a not insignificant minority has not used Epic. So I would say probably it's probably like a 65-35 split. 65% have used Epic or currently use Epic. 35% have not or do not currently use Epic. And uh, so it's one thing to kind of talk to them about using Epic, but it's another thing to actually see someone using it. And it's another thing specifically when they talk about some of the shortcuts or things they do to try to make it faster. If you're in product space, if you're looking for startups, that's a really good thing to look for is people who have made shortcuts or have made shortcuts in a current system trying to make their work better, because right there, that in of itself shows you a place where you can begin to add value by building something that fills that gap. And I think there's a lot here within Epic that to me says there's just a lot here that says like, okay, so there's UI design that can be improved, there's UX design that can be improved, but I think there are also things that we can just think about at a higher level with technology that could help make this experience smoother. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch his shortcut videos because they're gone. I have seen some others on YouTube. I'm going to try to dig into those at some point in the future. But for now, I want to talk about the patient encounter. And specifically, I want to talk about this challenge of manipulating structured and unstructured data, because this is the core problem. I believe this is the core problem with basically any EHR, and specifically Epic, but any EHR has this problem, and they all try to solve it in roughly the same way, but with slightly different variations. And so I think the challenge here, the goal or the problem to solve is, how do we make it so that a physician can input their own unstructured data as quickly as possible with templates and variables and things I've talked about in the past? But then how do we also grab the data out of that we need? One of the things that really was eye-opening to me is when it comes, Epic has this thing called Note Writer. And I don't know everything there is to know, again, just because I only watched one video on it. And basically, Note Writer, when you're building a template, these screenshots are from building a template. When you build a template, you can see here that these three, I guess, asterisks mean Note Writer. And so when a physician gets to that part of their note, when they're with a patient in the patient counter, that will open Note Writer. Note Writer is a combination of a free text box and essentially a structured input system. This is the bottom part of Note Writer. The top part is the free text area, but this part is what is really, really, really interesting to me. Because if we look at this and we say, okay, so all of these things are ways of describing a specific time or creating a specific set of attributes to apply to this abdominal cramping, abdominal pain system, we can see that there is, I mean, just at a quick glance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, so 8, 9, but let's see, 12, 15 maybe. So there's probably somewhere in the ballpark of like 35 or 40 options here. And that's not even to say the options that are above below the fold, nor is it to say whatever these little pieces of paper icons do. I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest. I didn't get that far. And we can suddenly see that there is such a high level of cognitive load that is required to consciously go back and change each and select the things that the physician needs. Like that is an intense amount of work that has to be done there, and that's all to create a series a piece of data that is unstructured and structured at the same time. Because all of these things could be written, I would imagine that most physicians could type the sentence that has all this information in it in a few seconds. I don't think that that would be a very long process. And so when I look at this and I look at, this plus some of these other things in here, so like for instance, choosing labs or data, like this drop down is just like, I mean, it's intense. It's so much in there. There's so much that you have to look at. But it's also a lot of really valuable data around basic labs, what's included in that, cardiology labs, immunosuppression labs, inflammatory lab, like all of these things are very specific things and require and probably differ from system to system. So how do you still create a system that can take those things? This is just a lot of me kind of processing this and thinking about it, I think. But I wanted to show you a little bit about what I was thinking. So I've talked a little bit about progress notes and how to write, how to structurally change unstructured data. I've talked about this, I believe I talked about this last week when it came to this system of replacing variables and creating some kind of floating text area that maybe can be, you know, um, typed in voice to text, or maybe even using a pencil, an Apple Pencil type device, stylus device. Can you can input text there. And so I've been playing around with how this structures in with this encounter page, because not only is it important, in my opinion, that a physician can input this data quickly and easily, particularly within this system, but then it's also important that they can input the structured data to add, I think, the context. So one thing that comes to mind here is that, with the physical exam, like we can do that. Like we can have each section for the exam, we can have the section for the vitals, but it's when it comes to adding data, like a recent lab, imaging scans, things like that. All of that stuff I think can live inside of this note. And I think that based on the way a physician operates, that's not only is it the most valuable when it lives inside the note, but it is also, I think, the most useful for billing purposes. And this is where I am even thinking around, like, okay, so how do we help a physician code for this visit? We select the visit type, we select the complexity, the data complexity, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff has to be selected in here. And so this is a rough idea. I'm still kind of playing around with it. My thought is that, we basically have each section in the note. There is kind of a ability to potentially, when maybe a physician tabs between each of these areas, and when they do, maybe there's a shortcut or a menu that pops up that allows them to insert a piece of a template for that section. And then when they do that, they can then tab between potentially the variables within that section. So it'd be kind of like combining um, this original version where you can tab between these items, but it's on a more granular level. It's by allowing a user to input this data quickly without necessarily forcing them to leave their keyboard ever. The other thing that I think is important about this is the ability to add data. I think we talked about this last week, but basically being able to insert data and add like a template or insert data, I think is really important here, where we are able to give a user the control that they need of, okay, I don't just need to say that this person, we ran a flu test, or we ran a, got blood work, but that they actually, here's what those results were, and here's how that's pertinent to the order that we are creating. So part of my concern has been that this is too simple. And I think, we're missing a lot of context, we're missing a lot of features. I need to flesh all of that out. But one of the concerns I've had is that it is too simple. But I think the more and more I look at this, the more I wonder if maybe it is just the right amount of simple that we then begin to highlight and surface information alongside of it. So that's what I'm gonna be working on this week, is how to highlight that information, how to surface that information, how someone's going to tab between this. I'm not so concerned with that right at the moment. That's a very important thing to do, but I'm more concerned with how is someone going to surface this information, and when they do, how are they going to how does that help them make a decision, and how does that help them complete their encounter. So this is still just kind of a little bit of a progress thing. It's a little bit kind of processing a lot of this new information to me. Some of it is just kind of still more explorations. I've got different ideas of how this might lay out. I think I showed these last week. Nothing has really gotten concrete yet. And this is just all part of this process of importing this data, looking at new data, looking at new information, doing this comparative analysis, seeing what other people have done, seeing what the industry is used to, and then beginning to say, okay, how can we take these things? How can we improve on them? But how can we really make the process smoother? So that's it for this week. I think it's pretty short. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy watching the videos. If you have any questions or thoughts, please, as always, feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.